The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, WGC FedEx St. Jude Invitational DraftKings Picks and Preview. We're going to be going through the entire field. I want to remind everyone out there to smash the like button. That's step one in all of this. And give me your favorite sleeper below $7,000 in the comment section. Also, rate the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast 5 stars. Bonus points if you tell a friend. Although if you're listening to the Pat Mayo Experience podcast, chances are you don't have any friends. I'm sorry to hear about that. I can be your friend. That's why you're listening, right? Okay. Also, fantasynational.com/Mayo gets you 20% off. I highly recommend doing, if you've never before or you've never been a part of Fantasy National before, go to fantasynational.com/Mayo on Wednesday for the weekly membership. Now, I'd say just buy the annual. It's the best value on the board. But if you want the weekly to test out the waters, Wednesday's the day to do it. That way, you get all the info for the St. Jude, all the info for the Barracuda, and it goes 7 days, so you get all the information and tools open to you for the PGA Championship as well. Get that double dip in. Yeah, don't be afraid to bend the rules to your favor on that one. Promo code Mayo or /Mayo gets you 20% off. Only going to be $8. Just try that out. Joining me on the line from DKNation.com, a preeminent golf writer in the space, one who cannot beat Pat Mayo for Fantasy Golf Writer of the Year ever. It's Geoff Ulrich. What's up?
Oh, it's so true. I've been nominated twice, denied twice, and then you just come in and swoop in, Pat, and grab that thing from me. But no, I'm doing great, man. Thanks a lot for having me on. And hey, I mean, a couple more events, and we finally get to the first major of the season. So,
I mean, not even a couple more events. We got one more event to go.
One more.
Like, we're there.
I guess
week.
I counted the Barracuda.
Yeah, DraftKings isn't running any contests for Barracuda. I think it has something to do with the wonky Stableford scoring. It just like breaks their systems. They're like, you know what? Although there is, people always overrate demand for this stuff. It's like when I don't know, when Challenge Tour people are like, oh my God, I can't believe the contests are so small for European Challenge. It's like, it's because there's 8 people who want to play this. I think the Barracuda could have done well, and just because I think that field is just more appealing, especially with a no-cut event. On the other side, with all the bigger names, like the actual people who kind of dig into golf every week, love the Barracuda field, myself included. But at the same time, I kind of get it. I don't think they're missing out because they don't have any Barracuda.
I think they're really missing out on the Martin Keimer comeback story this week, personally. So, big miss by DraftKings there. I'm just kidding. I mean, you're right. The Puerto Rico Open is another one of those events where people get so excited and then, they have trouble sometimes filling contests. But it would have been cool. I think it's a Stableford scoring thing, though. We have this conversation every year around this time, and it just obviously screws them up to the point where they want to be able to put out a reliable scoring product, and they obviously can't do that. So.
Yeah, of course. That means that what they're going to do is just wait out until it's the DraftKings Open, and then it's just a very easy integration with the system.
I remember when you brought that idea up, and it's still very good idea. So one day.
So we're in Memphis for TPC Southwind. I've hit on this a few times so far, but if you check out my column, you'll see that if you search course history, you're only going to find 1 year of data from this course as a WGC. That was last year, 2019, the first year it moved from Firestone to TPC Southwind. Before that, sometimes, depending on the system that you use, if you're looking up tournament history, you're going to get tournament history from Firestone. So you want to pivot over to the St. Jude Classic if you're looking for this course. There's been a PGA event played in Memphis every year since 1958, so we're not stopping that. This is only the second year as a WGC setup and small field no-cut event for this course. What are you looking at for TPC Southwind? What do we know? We know it's a long par 70. We know that there's a lot of water. And we know that there's no cut this week. So what sort of players are you leaning towards?
I mean, yeah, this course really definitely plays more like a Florida course. I really group it in with things like PGA National, Copper. I think Copperhead is probably the best comparison or the closest comparison you can make.
Geoff, I'm going to cut you off right there. Is this just a way for you to tell us about how you're betting Paul Casey?
We'll get there, but yes, that has been done this week. I mean, look, let's just talk about it first. I mean, 90-1. Were you expecting those type of odds on Paul Casey?
I
would have probably been happy with 60-1, but
I mean, 60-1, I probably wouldn't have bet it. I have no faith in Paul Casey, but it opened at 100-1. I was like, I'm in. Let's go. I have wasted my money on such stupider things. Although this is probably near the very top of stupid things I've just like lit my money on fire for, but 100-1 Paul Casey in a limited field. And what happens if he gains 1 stroke putting this week? Where do you think he finishes? Just say, like, at the end of the week, you look at his like overall metrics and he has a +1 in the strokes gained putting. What's he going to finish, like 4th?
Yeah, I was going to say like T8, but T5 is also possible. I mean, if he goes nuts with his irons and ends up, I mean, he led the field in greens and regulation here last year. I know people like to look at strokes gained approach more, but I mean, that's a pretty good sign as well. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking to a guy who's like bet Paul Casey at the Masters at like 50-1 last 3 years. Yeah, I'm going to bet him at 90-1 in pretty much any event. So that was something that, I was going to get around to when I brought up Copperhead. And look, last time Paul Casey won at Copperhead, he missed the cut terribly at the
Players.
TPC Sawgrass at the Players. So I've done my research a little bit on that too. But again, it just comes down to price there. Back to TPC Southwind though. Like I said, it plays a little bit like a Florida course. Again, I don't necessarily think you just have to target players who've done well in Florida, but I think that's a good starting point at the very least. So looking at those venues, strokes gained approach, but one thing I did find a little bit interesting here, I think it was the top 20 or top 22 players. They all gained strokes putting here last year in this event. So as much as this is kind of a bit of a ball striker's paradise, I mean, you can't do nothing on the greens, which maybe does not bode well for a Paul Casey bet. But at the same time, this does come down to more of just like a venue where you want to emphasize strokes gained approach a little bit more. I do think it can be classified as just, strokes gained tee to green venue where you need to be pretty much solid in all facets of your game. But the green complexes here tend to be a little bit easier, especially probably should be easier than what we saw at Muirfield anyways. So that's something else to consider. Some of these bigger hitters tend to have a easier time around the green, kind of what we've seen with like Dustin and Brooks the last couple of years.
It's funny, like even looking at it, you're kind of right. Like I actually weighted strokes gained putting into the modeling this week and gave it like a 10% emphasis. Yeah. Like Bubba gained strokes putting, like he's kind of hit or miss when it comes to the greens, especially on Bermuda. But everyone else is like kind of someone that you'd peg as a pretty good putter. Like Rory's kind of hit or miss. But like you have Webb, Leishman, Fleetwood, Fitzpatrick, Poulter, like all these guys kind of pop up inside. But you have someone like Patrick Reed who loses 2.5 strokes and still comes in 12th, who is probably one of the better like long-term consistent putters. So it's still a bit dicey. Like you're probably not going to see me on Corey Connors, put it that way.
Exactly. So I mean, and again, like the wind could get up a little bit this week and maybe change things into the fact where it just emphasizes like strokes gain approaches more and tee to green play more. So that's something else to consider. I'm not necessarily putting off players because I don't think they're putting well or anything. Obviously, I kind of like Paul Casey, but at the same time, if it comes down to it, I'll probably take someone who's trending a little bit better in that area just because of the last couple results that we've seen here.
Yeah, only one winner has finished worse than 16th in the week in the past 10 years in strokes gained off the tee. Like, there's so much water and that presents such blow-up numbers that you do want someone who can drive the ball and just keep themselves safe. Like, that's step one. It's not the most imperative. You don't need to lead the field in driving, but if you're, like, way back, that means you're wet and you're, like, +10.
Wet and +10, and there are some bigger carries here. So if you're just really short, you're putting a lot of pressure on your longer iron game. So obviously that can be made up. I mean, a guy like Webb Simpson, who's just a terrific long iron player, doesn't have a problem with that. But there are shorter hitters out there who will. So if they're not hitting a ton of fairways and they're laying back too much, I mean that'll come into play too. Which is again why I feel like Dustin and Brooks, they just put themselves in good positions. Obviously they had really good weeks with their putter, like top 2% weeks kind of thing, especially Brooks last year, but they put themselves in the prime position to start. So
so I think that like fairways gained and driving accuracy combined with like long and straight, only one of those things that you actually need to be to enter the mainstream adult film industry, but here you need to have both. So if you're looking at someone who's like Rahm and Rory, theoretically I think set up the best. If you're just looking at spreadsheet golf, I mean those are the two best players, but also they do the two things that you really want here, long and straight. That's what you need.
Yeah, and I think it does speak a little bit to Rory's had quite a bit of success in Florida over his career. Obviously won the Players, but he's won Honda Classic, a PGA National as well. So a player who maybe excels a little bit on these type of tracks where he's so consistent off the tee and he's putting himself in such good positions. He doesn't necessarily have to worry about the water as much because of his consistency off the tee, that he just over time, he's going to really dominate at these kind of tracks. So I think Rory, between the two, probably a little bit better long-term. Obviously, he's more consistent off the tee. I mean, Rahm's playing really great right now, but I think that sort of speaks to the type of player you're looking at. Webb Simpson is another player, but he does it more just from hitting fairways and being so good with the long irons, like I said, but it's still someone who's peppering fairways. So I'm not someone who's necessarily going to look at driving accuracy, but I think you bring up those good stats that you have on Fantasy National, like fairways gained. I think that's definitely something I would work into a model this week, especially one if you were building it there.
Yeah, so the top 10 players since the restart in this field in terms of fairways gained, Streelman and Todd are tied for the lead. I think Streelman's actually kind of interesting this week because he's been putting a lot better. Then you have JT Poston, Kevin Na, T Dunks, Fitzmagic, Answer, Webb, Morikawa, Casey, Michael Thompson. Then you have like Reeve, Rahm, Berger, Landry, and Adam Hadwin are all the guys after that. And the only ones that rank inside the top 50 in this field in driving distance of that group is Jon Rahm, who is 10th in driving distance. The next closest one is Xander, 7th in driving distance, 19th in accuracy.
Yeah, and some of these names that you're spouting out, I mean, I've already seen some people talking about guys like Brendan Todd this week, who's coming off a couple nice finishes, but he's been peppering fairways a lot, and when he can keep himself dry, I mean, and safe, he's a guy who can just fill it up on the greens as well. And the other player, I mean, and then you have a player like Abraham Answer, who, if he wasn't coming off the weirdest performance ever in his career, where he lost, I think, like 7.8 strokes on approach, this would be like the perfect venue for Abraham Answer. I don't think I could think of a better venue, long-term for a guy like that, who is actually, I wouldn't say he's long off the tee, but he's not super short. He does hit a ton of fairways, and then his approach game is top-notch, right? So Answer is the type of player who you'd expect to really excel long-term. Again, though, he's coming off that weird performance. There was a little bit of rumblings that he might have tweaked his wrist at the end of the Travelers. So maybe that built into that performance where he was so bad with his irons at the Memorial. But again, that type of player, if you're not like a long straight hitter like a Xander or something like that, then Abraham Answer is kind of the model for me, looking at players more down from the top elite tier.
Let's talk about the 10K range. It's really tough this week. Like, you have Jon Rahm at the top. He's 11-4. Rory is also above $11,000. Then you have Bryson at an even 11. Justin Thomas, 10-7. Patrick Cantlay is $600 drop down to 10-1. And those are all the guys, $10,000 and above. This is a no-cut event. The leaderboard on DraftKings is going to flip-flop basically every single hole. Like, you could be in first place after 3 rounds and then last place, because guys are just going to storm up and shoot 9 under from the back of the pack. Then all of a sudden, oh, you actually needed that guy who was irrelevant for the entire tournament. I hate no-cut events on DraftKings. Fortunately, there are 78 players in this field. It's not 30 players in the field. So that does lend itself a little bit to creating a few more unique lineups and giving you a few more options. But you probably always want to leave a bit of money on the table, and this is probably a good week to go super contrarian. In my contrarian stance, I'm not using anyone above $10,000.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. My first inclination was more just because of the depth of the field. I think it lends itself more to super just top heavy stacks with I'm definitely gonna have a lineup with Rahm and Rory in it, because I think that the guys at the lower end, like 6,500, maybe even below, they're more live than at a normal WGC event, because the depth of the field, they've taken players from outside of the top 50 in the world, rather than just bringing in the Sean Norrises of the world to fill it up kind of thing. And maybe we only have
in fairness, Sean Norris is playing in this field.
No, I know he is, but he's the only one. A lot of times we get multiple Sean Norrises, I guess is my point, and we have 5 of them to choose from, and they're all terrible, and none of them end up cracking the top 50. But this week we have guys Hao-Tong Lee is 6,100. He's really good. Joel Dahmen is 6,200. So I think it just lends itself a little bit more to that. But at the same time, people are going to notice that. So you can be contrarian, I think, in both directions. And again, if you're making multiple lineups, maybe you're making 5, maybe making 10, probably doing a couple of both, super balanced where you're not going over 10K, and then super top heavy It might be a good way. It's a good way to at least get yourself unique lineups, I think.
I think that you're somewhat correct on that. I just think a lot of people will have a gigantic problem with fading anyone from the 10K range. Like, I'm only going to play, I usually play 20, 25, 30 lineups, check everything, and I'm playing 3 lineups this week. I'm going to save my bullets for next week at the PGA Championship. I'll play the 3 in my tournament. Also, if you're just watching the show for the first time, every single week, you can find the link to the Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League in the description of the podcast in video. The tournament's full this week, so you can't join it this week. But, when you see the First Look show come out on Saturday evening or Sunday morning, probably something you want to get in on. I'm not going to lie to you. If you want to get your spot reserved, because there's a limited amount of people that can actually join that for the guaranteed rake-free tournament. Best tournament on DraftKings. I have a hard time believing that people are going to look at this no-cut event and almost where you said it, you can build from the bottom up if you wanted to. Therefore, you could have Rory and Rahm, or Rahm and Bryson, or Bryson and Rory. Those lineups are acceptable. Hell, we didn't even talk about Justin Thomas in this. But I just feel like the guys in the 9K aren't too far behind them. If everyone plays at their peak, Rahm or Rory are probably going to win. But if they don't play at their peak, then guys like Webb and Brooks and that type of player can really come through. So the one guy I'm seeing that's probably not going to carry a lot of ownership here is Patrick Cantlay, which I was really surprised about.
Yeah, that's music to my ears. I really like Patrick Cantlay, not just for this week, but for next week as well. I really feel like he's a player who's trending towards doing something big. Kind of much like Jon Rahm seemed to be doing since the restart. But you're right. I thought Cantlay might end up being a little bit chalky this week, but now that I have sort of taken in the salary structure, you're dead on about the 9K range. I was just bringing up the top heavy stacks for, again, you're thinking about being a little bit more contrarian. I think that's one way to do it. But look, the 9K range, I'm not going to disagree with you. If a guy like Xander Schauffele or even Hovland or Morikawa just play up to their peak, it's going to take a monster effort by Rory or Rahm to beat them. So stacking and going with the 9K range, I think that's going to be the move. You also have Brooks and Finau down there in the low 9K range, super affordable. And people are going to gravitate to both those players for different reasons. So, yeah, I think Patrick Cantlay could be the odd man out here. I think people will look at the $600 difference between him and Thomas, and they're just going to take Thomas because, quite frankly, he's still the better player. He's proven more explosive, just a far better win rate at this point in his career. But look, I really like the way Patrick Cantlay's trending. He's out of his last 16 starts, he's been T21 or better in 13 of them. This is a player who just does not play poorly. He just hasn't quite won at the same rate as a guy like Justin Thomas, but he could pop off for a couple event run at any time, in my opinion. And parts of his game have really improved over the last couple of years, over the last year, really, his putting and short game. So I like taking advantage of that this week. I've already kind of bet him actually 20-1. I don't necessarily love the price, but it's more of a hedge for me against a PGA Championship bet I already made. So I do like this price from the fact that he's not going to be overly chalky, though. And you can still, if you start with him, you can still almost do your plan, like you said, go Cantlay, and then just load up on guys in the 9K range as well.
When I first assessed the betting board this week, when I was talking to Jeff, I found it really strange that Cantlay was this weird, in-between player between the top 4 in the betting odds, and then everyone else. Cantlay was priced way ahead of Xander and Webb and Morikawa and Hovland and Brooks and Hatton and all of these guys, where I don't think that he's earned that cred in terms of the betting market. However, in terms of DraftKings, I think it's going to lead to really low ownership on a guy who's generally super chalky. I think you're right about that I don't think that I'm going to end up using him, but maybe I can reconstruct my lineups a little bit because I just don't see a world where Webb should be 22-1 and Cantlay should be 16-1. Even though, listen, Cantlay can definitely win, but Webb actually wins a lot.
Yeah, oh no, completely. And again, I bring up the odds. I don't really think they're that great. You're not getting super value. You can get him around 20-1 out there if you look around, but again, some people may not have access to that as well. But the one thing I will say about Cantlay, he was 14-1 at Memorial. So now we're getting basically the same kind of quality of field, and he is a little bit higher than that. And it's almost like, okay, he doesn't have the super great course history at Memorial, so now he still played well there, and he shook off the competitive rust. So I don't think it's necessarily the worst number, but I agree. I think from a DraftKings perspective, leveraging that lower ownership with him and these GPPs, probably the better play. But I do really like him just the way he's trending. I mean, I feel like he's a player who came off the break. He's gotten those. I mean, for him to come in at Memorial basically cold, he would have had 2 top 10s if not for one bad round. And I mean, if he had top 10 at the second time at Muirfield Village, his number might even be worse this week. So that's something to consider. But I think in that range, anyways, for DraftKings purposes, which is what we're talking about, it's just going to lead to lower ownership, which is really nice.
Bryson, are you in or out this week?
Haven't made a super definitive decision, but I really probably will be out on him. I want to play some Rory, and I might even get a little bit of exposure to Rahm. So that just means that, I'm not going to play all 3 guys and spread them across lineups. I'll probably end up fading Bryson. I just don't like the fact that he still hasn't figured out his irons, and now we're coming to a course where, yeah, like being long and straight off the tee is great, but you need to at least be, sort of top 30% with your irons at least, which Bryson has not done over his last really few events. And even though he won at Detroit, obviously still losing strokes on approach, it just scares me a little bit too much, especially for a player with 11K. So if Bryson figures it out here, I have a little bit of a piece on him for the PGA as well that I made earlier. So that'll be enough to suffice, but for me right now, I can't really make a great argument other than probably most people are thinking like me, and he's probably he might even be lower owned than Cantlay. So
that was the point that I was going to get to. Like, I haven't completely decided on which way that I want to play this, but I think I'd rather pay up for Bryson than play Cantlay, because I project those 2 guys to be way lower owned than the other 3 guys above. And like, it's really hard. Like, you're really nitpicky at this point. Like, do you say, well, it's really hard to make a pros and cons list and say, hey, here's why Rahm is better than Rory, Bryson, Thomas, and Cantlay kind of thing. Like, they're all kind of the same. Like, I think the Cantlay is a tier down from a lot of these guys. You can make a pretty good argument that Bryson hasn't quite reached that level yet in terms of overall career, but the way that he's been playing outside of one tournament, you would kind of have to go with it. And I think that his driver, if he can continue to gain so much off the tee, like the players that we've seen play really well here, like Rory and Brooks go head-to-head going into the final round last year. Those are like the 2 best drivers of the ball on planet Earth. The year before that, Dustin was the best driver of the ball on planet Earth. He won. Bryson is currently the best driver of the ball right now. That it seems to me that he has the one secret sauce skill that can overcome a lot of the problems here. And it doesn't seem like people want to play him, which is really strange.
Yeah. Again, it's just recency bias, right? I mean, it's one bad cut. I mean, you take that one event out, and if he had just skipped that event and come in, I mean, he probably would be like 5%, maybe even more, maybe 10% higher in terms of ownership. So it's all good points. I mean, if the irons get going even a little bit, he's not a player who has to gain like 8 strokes with his irons now because his driver is so good and putting him in such good position. And he is a player who can get really hot with his putter too. So something to consider. He's a better long-term putter than Justin Thomas at this point in his career. I feel pretty safe saying that.
He is a better long-term putter than any one of these 5 guys, like by a pretty significant margin. Yeah,
fair enough. I mean, obviously, like Rory and Rahm can get hot with their putter too, but I think, and again, I mean, I don't have all the stats in front of me, but I wouldn't take argument with that at all. He can get really, really hot with the putter, and we've seen that before. I mean, before he became Beast Bryson, that was kind of how he started winning tournaments, right? So a really interesting figure. Him and Cantlay are going to be, if one of them end up winning, I mean, you can get some really good leverage in GPPs this week. So definitely, I mean, you might have already switched my mind a little bit on Bryson. I might have to reconsider my stance on Rory, but we'll see.
Yeah, I kind of just talked myself into Bryson, which I did not.
Yeah, I feel like you talked me into it too. So.
All right, so good. So Bryson's definitely going to come like dead fucking last this week. So great news. Bryson over the past 5 tournaments is averaging 3 strokes gained on the greens per tournament. Over his past 10, 2.7. Over his past 20, 2.2. Rory is 0.5 over his past 5, 0.7 over his past 10, 1.1 over his past 20. And then you have Rahm, who's 0.1 over his last 5, 1.9 past 10, 1.7 over his past 20 starts. But the thing that you'll notice between Bryson versus Rory and Rahm is just the overall consistency, where Rahm and Rory, like you mentioned, have these big spike weeks. And that's what it takes to win, one of these huge spike weeks. But Bryson is just constantly lingering, like plus 4 strokes game, plus 2.2. That's not a bad week for him, because he's obviously everyone's going to lose strokes putting at some point. But it just seems like week in, week out, Bryson gets a bad rep on the greens because he misses like a bunch of 18 footers, which doesn't actually hurt your strokes gain putting all that much because that's a very low percentage putt to make. It just people just so focus in on Bryson and everything he's doing well or everything he's doing poorly that people don't seem to know that people don't make a lot of 18 footers on a consistent basis.
Yeah, he gets a worse rap than he deserves for sure in that regard. I mean, around the greens is kind of the same thing. I mean, he can definitely do some blow ups, and again, people have that fresh in their mind from the last few events. But dude, on a consistent basis, he sinks more long putts. I would venture to guess than Rahm and Rory for sure. So again, if you're thinking about Bryson, don't discount him because of like a putter, that's for sure. But the only thing I'm worried about is just him figuring out those irons. But man, I mean, like when he starts to gain strokes consistently with his irons, and I know we've been saying this for a while, I mean, he might become unstoppable. So he's already kind of been unstoppable. It just, I'm almost wonder if he's just waiting for that major to really start firing with those clubs. And I make it sound like he can just flip it on at some point, but the dude is so methodical in his approach. It wouldn't shock me if we just see it, maybe even start this week and then go into next week. I'm still really high on Bryson for the majors at the very least. And this is like as close as you can get to a major. So if he starts firing again, wouldn't shock me at all.
They're going to have to go to Mr. Big and Tall if he ends up winning Augusta to get like the bulked up green jacket for him. I do think that is the best setup for him of all of the majors upcoming.
Yeah. Yeah, no, if you really look at it, I mean, the wider fairways, you have to get like Craig Stadler's jacket out of the locker room. I mean, the walrus, right? So, or whatever it's called. But yeah, the wider fairways there, the extra par fives, it sets up really, really well for Bryson long-term as well. I don't mind TPC Harding Park as well. Just having looked at the course a little bit, there's not a ton of dog legs or anything. And it really looks like the sort of straighter routing is going to like lend itself to taking a lot of drivers. There's a little bit of possibility the rough is really up, but you know, Bryson's been driving it pretty straight as well. And again, he's so long and he's so, you know, just bulky now that hitting out of the rough probably isn't going to affect him as much as it does other people. So I think TPC Harding Park could be good, but you're right. Of all the three major venues, I mean, Augusta has to be the best place for him.
9K range. Webb Simpson is the most expensive. I have bet Webb Simpson to win this event at 22-1. He's $9,900. I've also bet Xander Schauffele at 22-1 to win this event. He's $9,800. And you got Hattenberger, Morikawa, Hovland, Dustin, Brooks, Finau, Fitzpatrick. It's a pretty clustered range, and I think that you would be fine if you wanted to use like three of these guys and do an adjusted stars and scrubs that way. But I mean, I also bet Brooks to win. He's down to 28. He was 33. I think I'm just going to go Webb, Xander, Brooks, the three guys that I bet, construct a few lineups around them, and then I'm going to splice in Morikawa at 95. With only three lineups, I'll probably like try to splice him into one or two and divvy up the top of my lineups that way. I can't figure out what the fuck to do with Dustin, to tell you the truth. Like, you need to have some balls to play Dustin this week, but it could be like an actual life-changing amount of money winner if he comes through.
Yeah, Dustin is, it just feels like a big setup, doesn't it? Like everyone is going to gravitate a little bit more towards Brooks and Finau down there, and they'll just all, or they'll just pay up for guys like Xander and Webb who've been more consistent. And Dustin is just going to be like 3% owned, and he's going to come in and he's just going to kind of, you know, lank on the course and just go about his business and shoot like 466s and come like either win or come like top five, right? So it wouldn't shock me in the least. I have no idea what's going on with Dustin Johnson. No one really does. If he's actually a back injury or if it's just like a minor thing or a major thing. So I probably, you know, we talk about people, I don't have the balls to do that this week. I don't think I'm going to bother. Again, we're getting such an elite field that I feel like there's still lower owned plays. Like I really feel like even the players above him, I don't feel like the Berger, Morikawa, Hovland range is going to be highly owned at all. I think most people are going to gravitate either going down towards Brooks or Finau, saving that money, or going up to like the course history, or not the course history, just going up to Schauffele and Simpson, who have been a little bit more talked about already this week and the far more consistent players of late. I think Schauffele coming off a performance where he basically saved everyone's week who was on him at the Memorial, building up that goodwill. It's just good recency bias for people to drop back on, right? So, you know, Dustin is really interesting just from a pure How owned is he going to be? Probably not much, but I'm probably safe just going elsewhere. Because I did take a little piece of Brooks as well. I just felt like that number was too big, but I'm not super confident in it. Not as confident as some other people seem to be. He did strike the ball well, though, in Minnesota. And, -6 strokes putting, it's just not something that Brooks Koepka usually does 2 events in a row. So
no, and it's one of the worst of his career, the third worst of any miscut performance on the greens in his career so far, and that's dating back to 2014 when we have all that shot link data from him. I think Hatton's the guy in this range that if you actually want to roll the dice, I'm not sure where his ownership is going to come in because he just seems overmatched by the name power that surrounds him. And if people want to go with like good form course history, they're going to be on Berger, who's won at this course twice. But Hatton has 4 top 10 finishes in his past 4 starts. Like, he's been fucking amazing.
He's really good. And over his career, he's been this type of player. Like, he'll go for 2-month stretches where he's just like T8 or better in every event, and he'll pick up a couple wins. So obviously we're talking about a different class of players he's competing against now on a weekly basis, but dude can get red hot. And realistically, again, you talk, I mean, this has some similarities to where he just, almost won again at Harbor Town. He just wanted a Florida Links course. Like, he should eat up this type of venue as well. He sets up similar as a type of player to Webb Simpson, who's done well here. So I can't really say anything bad about him, except like you said, he feels like he's a little bit overmatched now in his salary range, much kind of like Matthew Fitzpatrick feels like. Both these English players getting a big bump in salary, being mainly just due to some insane recent finishes where they either climbed up the leaderboard Sunday or Hatton has just had himself in contention like 3 events in a row now. So I don't really know what to do with those players either. I don't really want to play them at their salary, but I also recognize these are pretty good setups for both these players. Fitzpatrick is an insanely good Bermuda grass putter. If you even look at those kind of stats, you don't have to, but either one of these dudes could pop off. And I really feel like hitting the right type of player that has his salary juiced up a little bit is probably going to be the key to this week. Like, even maybe like a Daniel Berger, if you play him or don't play him, one of these guys who's just feels a little bit out of his range, probably going to overperform again and might be the key to this week.
It could be. If you built your team Webb, Hatton, Berger, and just use that style of player, I think that would be way off the beaten path. And I do think that those 3 players are somewhat correlated together in skill set rather than like, Xander or Morikawa, where they have like supreme ball strikers. Though Hatton's ball striking has been amazing. But then you take 3 of the best putters in the field and just hope they get hot. I have no real interest in Fitzpatrick here, and I think he's going to be super popular.
Yeah, I think people are kind of on this train. And again, I think it's just a good, I don't know if it's a good, but it's like a merging of really good course history, some stats that can lend you towards this and saying like, oh, well, he's not actually that expensive because, again, like I say, he's a good Bermuda putter. He's got great form. He's just been talked up in the media by like Bones Mackay, who is his caddy. I mean, everything is kind of converging for Matthew Fitzpatrick, and it really feels like this is probably going to be a letdown. I mean, he's priced more than Hideki Matsuyama and Patrick Reed. I mean, like,
that seems crazy.
It's as you would say, Pat, it's fucking nuts. Like, I'm not paying up for Matthew Fitzpatrick at 9K this week. But
to think about it like I'm not either.
Yeah.
But like, if he was going to be like 3% owned, I might, just because in a field with only 78 players and no cut, you're going to have to take guys you don't want to take and play the ownership game somewhere. And that would be a spot to do it. But that's not even the case. Like, Hatton seems far more like that guy than Fitzpatrick does.
Exactly. And since I brought up the 2 of them, I mean, I would much rather pay up for Hatton than Fitzpatrick here. So again, if he's even going to push like 10% ownership, which seems very, very likely, then I'll be completely out. I think Matsuyama is probably the dude who won't be getting the love any love in that range. But again, we don't have final ownership projections or anything, but as far as paying up for old Matty Fitz, I'll be out. I'll look for other dudes to back.
Yeah, so let's talk about the 8K range. Hideki is the top of that range. He is $8,900. I have him as projected, besides Dustin, to be the lowest owned player above $8,000. Like, from $8,000 to Rahm. Like, I have him to be the lowest owned. But at this entire range, on Fantasy National, I don't have a star next to any of these players.
Yeah. The 8K range is interesting. I do like one player quite a bit here.
Reed?
but I'm not super high on pretty much anyone else in this range, which again probably lends itself to being a good range for making some GPP sort of spots where you just take a stance, some GPP stances, I guess we'll call it, and living with the results, because guys like Tommy Fleetwood, even Abraham Answer, who's again, I think most people will be cautious with coming off that weird performance at the Memorial. These are players who are just set up very well for this type of venue. So Matsuyama, I don't think I'm going to go there. I haven't 100% decided that, but I still feel like Reed will probably be the minimal chalk in this range. And the guy I'm kind of interested why people aren't talking a bit more is Gary Woodland. That's the player I really do like from this range. It's been trending pretty well. He's gained strokes putting in 8 straight events now, which is absolutely insane considering we're talking about Gary Woodland. His approach game has been top notch. The only thing that worries is just his driver has been like very hit or miss of late. So
yeah,
that could really drag him down.
That's the thing. Like if his drive, and it's people are going to be using Gary Woodland here. I think that he's going to be one of the more popular plays from this range. And if his driver continues to be what it's been like, he's going to be wet all weekend.
Yeah, no, there's an element of risk with Gary Woodland. I'm not denying that as well. And he could easily put in a couple triple bogeys here and end up, like T50 after 3 rounds. So, but at the same time, you look at the rest of his game, this is pretty much exactly what we want from a type of player. And again, you look at his history, he has done well at places like, he's got a win at Copperhead as well. So you look at the last 2 winners of this event. I mean, Brooks, Dustin, US Open winners. I don't know. I'm okay eating a little bit of Gary Woodland chalk this week. I definitely, he was my first bet of the week too at 45 to 1. It is contingent on him finding some consistency with that driver, but maybe this style of course just brings out the best in it. He can just use that stinger all day long and doesn't have to bring out the driver quite as much and rely on his good iron play, almost like play this course a bit like Webb Simpson does. So I think Gary has that in his bag now, considering his putting is I guess upper tier. It sounds so strange to say, but I really like this price in him, and I do like the way he's trending.
There's a bottom part of the 8K range where I think that if you really wanted to make a stand, you felt good about it, that you could use one of these 3 guys. I just don't know which one to use, if I want to use any of them, because I don't think that I am. So you have Fowler, Day, and Spieth. No one's using these guys. I think I would prefer Ricky out of the 3. And I know Day's been playing a lot better, but it feels like the moment people want to jump back on board with Jason Day, it's curtains for them.
Yeah. Curtains. Yeah. I mean, I was doing some trying to get to this back issue that he had at Memorial with Jason Day. And again, it just sounds like he's not quite 100%. I mean, he's still playing guarded. And again, that worries you long-term because he was able to grind his way around Memorial, and that's fine. And his short game and putter came alive. But what happens when it turns into an outright, like sort of, ball striking fest where you need to be great with your approaches, and he's still not like able to just go at it 100%? It worries me. I wanted to consider him here, but I just don't think that this is quite the type of venue that his short game is necessarily going to shine through, because it's a little bit easier green complexes. So I think I'm probably out on Day as well. I'll be honest. I might go back to Spieth here. He did put up a T12 at this venue last season when he was kind of just doing it all with his putter. Now he is striking the ball a little bit better. I don't really want to play any of these 3, to be honest. But Ricky has been the most consistent off the tee. So I'm being very sort of non-committal here. It would come down to Fowler or Spieth for me as well. I think I'm okay canceling Jason Day out. He won me some money at the Memorial, so I'm not going to push my luck there. You're probably better off going with Fowler because of the consistency off the tee. I feel like Spieth probably a little bit better upside though if he does hit it straight this week.
Yeah, I'm just going to take a full pass on that entire range. So we'll go into the 7s.
That's probably what I'm going to do too. As you can tell, I was struggling to even talk.
Listen, you can just say that you have no interest in these guys. You don't need to give me a reason why they might play well. You don't need to be the fence sitter guy. You can say, fuck these guys. Well, let's move on. And then when you're wrong, we'll be like, I'll replay the clip and I'll be like, see what this guy knows. 7K range. I like Matthew Wolff at $7,900. No one's going to be talking about him because his like good performances have come at kind of like wonky places, but this does seem like a course where he could play really well. He's really good off the tee. The irons are clicking right now, and he's like super hot and cold with the putter, and he's super hot right now.
He's good. He was good here last year too. Like he didn't finish high up or anything, but he was solid around the bag. I'm with you. I like Matthew Wolff. Obviously, we got a couple. He's around a couple dudes too who. I don't think he was going to be super popular anyways, but I mean, Sergio and Casey always carry a little bit of ownership, especially when they're priced in this range. I do kind of like Sergio, who's been really, really good off the tee, but you can play two of these guys. I mean, if you're idiots like us and you want to play Paul Casey, you can still use Matthew Wolff in the same lineup.
I don't know if I'm going to use Paul Casey or not. I feel like my 100-to-1 bet with the top 5 is good enough for Paul Casey that I just won't let him abuse me in my DraftKings lineups.
I think that is an excellent strategy, and that is probably something I will be adopting as well. We got the big number on Paul Casey. Let's not push our luck, Pat, and like make it a double sort of headache week. So
it's true. Like
I think Matthew Wolff was
like the odds at 100-to-1 are so much better than his DraftKings price. Like if he was priced based on his odds, he would be like $6,700.
Exactly right. So it's a really good point. I don't think you need to do both this week with Paul Casey, unless you're just like a really big Paul Casey fan. Maybe you ran his fan Twitter account. But just getting back to Wolff, I like it. I really do like it. He's played a lot more consistent of late. He's just he's a player too who I think people still have in their mind, and maybe rightfully so, that he's inconsistent, so they don't need to use him at this type of event. He's only good to use in weaker field events. It just means that he's going to be lower owned, and again, you can pair him with a dude like Sergio, who I don't mind as well. Though Sergio has to bring some kind of competency on the greens, kind of like Casey this week. So, but as far as DraftKings goes, I would feel safer with Sergio than Casey. So.
Okay, so the entire 7K range, I'm just kind of assessing it. Like I'm interested in Na and Im, although Im has been a complete disaster. Na, after I'll never play Kevin Na again, back-to-back top 10s. So if a guy withdraws, sometimes you have to consider that bad luck, and then they're okay when they come back.
So what is the withdraw rules for the WGC? Like, does Kevin Na get paid if he withdraws after round 1?
Yes. So this is my biggest concern with Dustin as well, that if he actually has a back injury, not that like Dustin needs the money, but here's the thing about rich people. They like money. So if they can show up, hit one shot, and get like a check for $40K, probably going to do it. Yeah.
So again, this just leads me to, and I've just been avoiding Kevin Na entirely.
I've been using him every single week.
Well, you do one of you do that, or you do what I do and just pretend he doesn't exist, right? You play him relentlessly, because on the weeks where he does go off and he's 2% owned, because everyone like me and other people who've been burned by him have gotten off him. So you do one or the other. I'm pretending like he doesn't exist, especially for this week because of the WGC, again, WD rules, where he's still going to get paid if he WDs. And we also have a major coming up, so guys might want to. A guy like him might want extra rest. But if you've been playing him every week, there's no reason to stop now, because I can't see his ownership keep pushing up very high. And again, we're talking about a limited field event, so guys with lower ownership are kind of valuable. That's my take on Kevin Na, but I am still out on Sungjae Im. I get that people are playing the talent here, but I don't know. He does feel like he's going to be a tad bit chalky now too, because his salary is so down there, even for a WGC. I would probably rather just keep going down the list and go, in the low 7K range than play a little bit of chalk with Sungjae Im.
Yeah, I don't know how many people are going to be in on Sungjae. The thing I like about Na here is that, well, he's not driving the ball particularly well. He's hitting a ton of fairways. Kevin Na, like when you look at them statistically, he's sort of like the intercontinental champion Webb Simpson. Like, he's not great off the tee, but he hits a ton of fairways. He's a good iron player, and he can make fucking putts in bunches.
Yeah, it's a very good description. He's Webb Simpson light, basically. Maybe hits like isn't quite as consistent off the tee. Maybe isn't quite the iron player that Webb Simpson is, but he's close in all those regards, and he's probably a better putter than Webb Simpson, to be honest. He's probably a little bit better around the greens. Not that Webb Simpson lacks in that area or anything, but when dude gets hot, he can definitely top 5, especially at a venue like this. So again, with not, it's just you take the stance where you either play him or you don't. I mean, you either on him every week, in my opinion, and you're just going after that lower ownership, or you just pretend he doesn't exist right now, because it's a very strange situation for a guy who continually basically makes it known, like he could withdraw at any time. His back is an ongoing issue. The nice thing about Kevin Na is he has come out and told us this. Like, he's given us this info that he's basically like the riskiest DraftKings play on earth every week. So you know that information. You can't get mad at Kevin Na if he withdraws at this point. He's told you he's going to withdraw like a bunch of times during the year. So I totally recognize the upside. I think if I was looking for upside, I would play Na over him. But I'm probably just going to ignore both of them and either look at other players in this range or just ignore this range altogether.
Yeah, so like Casey, Leishman, and Kuchar just aren't going to make any of my lineups. But then you have Stenson. We haven't seen Stenson since the restart. He's back. I'm not going to be on him, and I don't think that very many people are going to be. I have a bet on him to win the PGA Championship that I made in December. Not feeling great about that bet at this moment. But I would like to see something from him. Like, on paper, this should be an awesome course for him. But I just have no idea where his game is at.
Stenson is a dude who normally we'd be coming into an event like this. If he had played even a couple times, you'd be all over it, right? I mean, iron play, he's a guy who can get hot with his putter. He's very inconsistent with that club, but again, he's a veteran player. So, and you look at the salary range he's in. I mean, he's $200 more than like Ian Poulter. So you're just getting such a good price on Henrik Stenson, and you don't need him to come like top 5 at this price. I mean, a top 12 if he has like a really good weekend with his iron play. And again, we're getting a WGC event where Henrik Stenson wants to get in 4 rounds. He's very much a player where he might start off slow and then just catch fire over the weekend. I will probably have a little bit of a dabble. And the nice thing about him too, you don't have to have a ton of Henrik Stenson to go overweight on the field this week. So a player I might dabble in this range, especially since I'm probably not going to have any Na or him.
Well, if you want to go with team no putt, you can just go to the bottom of the 7K range. Back to back in the pricing, you have Neiman, Scheffler, Connors, Homa, and like Bubba Watson. I'm going to be fading all of the guys who can't putt.
Yeah. I honestly haven't even considered this range. I mean, I think I might take a look at Max Homa a little bit, but the thing is, these players also feel a little bit overpriced here. And I know that's weird to say, but if you keep scrolling down under them, you're getting like a lot of international players who are a lot of them are ranked above these dudes in official world golf rankings. And they tend to show up in these bigger WGC events because they're really big events for players, you know, like a Matt Wallace or, well, not really Shane Lowry anymore, but maybe like RCB, because there's so many points and stuff at stake. And I mean, they just don't get these opportunities, obviously, to sometimes play every week. So I really like going with the cheaper international players over the players in this range. I might take a look at Homa, or maybe even Hadwin, but I'm probably going to fade that entire range. Bubba did kind of play well here last year, so he's been so weird lately, though. He looked really good after round 1 last week, and then I don't even know what happened to him in round 2. I just assume he hit in the water a couple times, but that might not even be true.
Dude is just like RVing around America at the moment. Like he has played every tournament, I think, since the restart.
He seems to be he seems to be having fun, and it's almost like he wants the weekend off or something. Like he tried. I mean, he was in great position after round 1, and it's almost like he tried to miss the cut. So maybe the no cut event gets Bubba going. I don't know. I know I brought up Max Homa, but I might actually, if I was going to play someone, I would probably play Watson over Homa here. Just again, I think with the no cut event, you could see players, and this is the case with a guy like Casey too, but you could see a player like Bubba, perhaps without the pressure of the cut, just come alive over the weekend. And he's a player, much like I said with Stenson, if he gets hot with his irons for 2 rounds, he can really push up towards the top in an event like this. So I'll probably heavily consider sprinkling at a little Bubba. Again, a player you don't need much of to go overweight. So
yeah, this range is a whole fade for me. It's really different trying to assess my lineups when I know I'm only going to play 3 rather than playing 20, that you really need to be a harsh critic of who you're going to cross off. There's no dabbling with a little bit of Bubba. It's either you're playing Bubba or you're not. So it's going to be a no for me. 6K range, though, I think there's some value down here, like you mentioned. So you can either do that like modified stars and scrubs where you take like 4 9K guys, or you can load up on Rory and Rahm, whatever you want to do. But here are the guys that I like from down here. I like Streelman. I like Shez a lot. I like Lowry, your boy, Cam Smith. And I really like Cameron Champ.
Cameron Smith, hey? I haven't even considered him. So.
Good in no-cut events. That's kind of his jam. He gets to have his bad round out of the way and not worry about it.
That is a very, very good point. I mean, another player who struggling to make weekends, but yeah, I mean, long-term Cam Smith is a pretty solid player. Obviously, he struggles with consistency and mainly just ball striking, but yeah, that's a good call. There are a lot of players I like, and again, that's why I didn't have much to say in the 7K range. But like Shane Lowry was a player who, if he had made the cut at Memorial, he probably cost me like 5 figures, to be honest. I had such a good lineup going there with Lowry. He missed a couple 3-footers. His putting has been absolutely terrible. We talk about like Bubba and Brooks and Casey being bad, but Lowry has been hitting it really well tee to green. No issues there. If the wind gets up a little bit this week and it doesn't turn into like a pure putting fest, I definitely like Shane Lowry. So he's played well in Florida a couple times in the past as well. Played well at Pebble Beach, places like that. So I'm in on that. 6,600 was way too low. I like the upside with a guy like Matt Wallace in this range. I think I'd probably play him over Ches Reavie. Again, I'm giving the international players a little bit of a bump in these no-cut events where I just feel like they're so good at stepping up. And, I got to bring up Louis, who he's been all over the map, but he's put together
all over the map in terms of like bogeys, makes a lot of bogeys.
In terms of just everything, stats, bogeys. But look, like he's had some really good rounds. He's had at Muirfield, they had 2 rounds where he gained over 3.8 strokes on approach alone. So he was pretty good here last year. Again, we're talking about a no-cut event where maybe he just comes in with a little bit no pressure and just puts it all together. So of those 3, I probably like Louis the least. I did bet him at 125 because, again,
you're a sucker.
Mainly for the each way odds, but he's just a player who he tends to do this, right? It's like he muddles around, his odds get way up, and then he comes like T4. So I'm not sure if I'll go overweight on him or go crazy with him on DraftKings, but just because I already have that bet. But I do kind of like the way he's trending. I think it's a little bit sneaky, and but this 6K range is just feels like chock full of possibilities. So.
How about the last guy? No cut. We're thinking about DraftKings scoring, and if anyone rostered Brian Herman last week at the 3M, you really see how DraftKings scoring is a lot different than how you finish on the leaderboard, because he finished with over 100 points. So
yeah, it's crazy.
Here's a name for you, Phil. Mickelson.
I haven't even looked at Phil. I got to look. Yeah, 6,600.
So he plays this course basically every single year. His driving and his irons were just atrocious at the WGC last year, but his driving's been actually like quite good so far since the restart, and his irons are hit and miss. Sometimes he's hot, sometimes he's not, but the putting really plagued him at Muirfield Village. But if you look back here, dating back to 2013, he's played every single year. He's lost strokes putting here once over that time frame. He lost 0.5, and he has certain events where he's gained over 11 strokes putting. Like, he just feels like he's going to make a lot of birdies, if nothing else.
I feel like there's like 4 guys in this range he could make that same argument for too, because you got Wiesberger and Ben Ann down there too.
Yeah,
kind
but they're
similar.
But they're bad putters. Phil is a good putter.
That's true. I think if you're just playing, I would probably go with. I mean, look, I'm not going to have any Phil. It's an interesting argument to make, though, just because you're right. I mean, DraftKings scoring at the same time, this course will play a little bit harder. So, no, I'm out on Phil. I'm not going to get sucked into that one. But it is an interesting argument because, again, we're getting 4 rounds. Phil also feels like a guy who might just like check out if he's not in contention.
No, he'll bring his coffee mug onto the course with him. Like, he's just having a good time out there shooting at pins, hitting bombs, firing at pins.
It's true. He's having a great time. I'm not going to trust it though, because I feel like there's too many other plays, and placing points do still matter in these. So no, I'm not in on Phil, but I'm not really in on any of those guys I brought up, to be honest. I think I'd rather go down. I kind of like the idea with Cam Smith. I think I'd rather go down, and I also like Tom Lewis at 6,200. So I'd probably play one of those guys, maybe even get a piece of Dahmen than pay up for Phil. Not paying up for Phil really, but then go to the 6,500 range. That's the one nice thing. Again, they expanded the field 78. They expanded the qualifications. The bottom end of this field it's way better than normal. So like the 6,200 guys and the 6,500 guys, there's just not much difference there. So you can really save. You can save quite a bit of money actually by going a bit further down.
Yeah, I might go out on Shane Lowry, add Phil to the player pool, but I still think
if this turns into a putting fest, I mean Lowry's going to do terrible. He was missing 2 foot at Memorial. I mean it was hard to watch. So.
Are you going to have the Tim Andercust of Scotland, Bobby Mack? Is he going to make your lineups?
Is Tim on him or something? Or?
No, he kind of looks like Tim. He's just a big lefty.
Oh, okay.
He's just a big Scottish lefty, and I mean that's Tim.
I mean, look, we're talking about people who make a lot of birdies. I mean, McIntyre can fill it up pretty quick. So I wasn't really thinking about him because I do like the way Tom Lewis is.
Yeah, but he's a significantly better player than Tom Lewis is.
I don't know if I'd say significantly.
How
better.
good is Tom Lewis?
He's pretty good. Like he won when he was like a teenager or something, and he went through a bit of a bad streak. But, I mean,
wait, you bring up like the Sam Darnold argument? It's like, oh, he's only 13 years old. He's great.
No, he's quite a bit older than McIntyre. But I mean, Lewis like lit it up on the Corn Ferry Tour out of nowhere. So I wouldn't say McIntyre is like significantly better. I think long term you're probably right. But Lewis has been playing good. I don't know what McIntyre has been doing. Has he even made a start yet?
No, he hasn't. Like he's a complete unknown. That's why I actually think if you're looking for pedigree down here, like I'm not playing Keegan, but Keegan actually kind of makes the most sense. But we're talking about putting. Yeah. I really like Champ at 62. Like why not Champ here? Sure. It's a par 70 Bermuda course. That's like his jam.
Yeah, I almost, when the pricing came out, I almost felt like Champ was going to end up being chalky a little bit. And like, I haven't looked at the final ownership percentages or anything. He might end up, but he's probably not going to be like super chalky just because it feels like in these no-cut events, nobody under 6,500 gains like a ton of ownership. So I'm with you on Champ. I mean, he stuck out to me the most in this range. And I'll even probably have like a Lewis Champ lineup where I'll just put both those guys. And then you can fit in pretty much whoever you want. Right. So that's why I like the bottom of this thing too much. You can also look Joel Damon. I mean, he sets up perfectly for this style of course as well. I mean, it's not as hard around the green complexes where he really struggled. He struggled with everything at Muirfield, but he could easily bounce back here. So Champ, Lewis, and Dahmen at 6,200. Those guys are, again, I'll be getting exposure to them for sure.
All right. That'll do it. WGC, FedEx, St. Jude, Invitational, DraftKings picks and preview. Geoff Ulrich, do you have any picks for the Barracuda?
So I have a couple made. Brendan Hagee, 80-1. And I stupidly forgot. I forgot they changed the course here, right? Like they're playing a different course than normal Barracudas here. Yeah. So I went off a little bit of course history with him, which is kind of stupid, obviously. But at the same time, he has been playing pretty well. Big hitter, altitude, and he's actually a really good putter. So he can fill up the birdies. And my main one is my dude, Ace Ventura, Christopher. I don't know how you pronounce it, but he's a big hitter too, and he's a really good putter. Again, I might also bet Matthias Schwab, but from a pure like making putts perspective, I kind of like Ventura a little bit better because he can just fill it up with that club, and he obviously won twice on the KF Tour last year, and also has been playing a little bit better late. So those are my main two ones. I also sprinkled a little bit on Bo Van Pelt.
What?
250. And Sang Moon Bay at 350.
Oh, have fun with those. Schwab is interesting because he opened at 45. He's down to like 25 now because I think every single person who covers golf in like the betting space has bet on Schwab, myself included.
Yeah, I probably should have bet him yesterday. But
I bet Munoz at 100-1. I looked this morning; he's 45-1.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a big move. I mean, Munoz at 100-1 was mispriced.
It seemed like the Casey number, but the Casey number still hasn't moved yet.
That's surprising to me. I guess people are just that fed up with Paul Casey, and they just have like they just don't think he can win a WGC, which I kind of understand, to be honest. So, regardless, you could give them 200-1 and they still wouldn't bet it. I guess there's enough people out there now that it's not moving the numbers, but yeah, we'll have to see where that ends up. I kind of expected Casey to get moved down too as well. So,
all right. Geoff Ulrich at The Fantasy Grind on Twitter. DK Nation for the new DraftKings playbook. If you want to go check that out, he has the articles out there. Where else can everyone find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at linemovement.com. I mean, the easiest thing is just go to my Twitter at The Fantasy Grind, but I'm doing betting previews for linemovement.com. It's a new site. Definitely go check that out. And also doing some work for Osimo as well. You can check us out. We did a first look show yesterday and have an article up there weekly as well.
All right. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at The PME, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I don't know if I have giveaways this week in terms of the tickets because there's no Millionaire Maker. I'm working on it, though, to get some sort of giveaway into this $25 contest. They might just be saving it all for next week at the PGA Championship, probably when you want to play a little bit more. Highly recommend that you use fantasynational.com. Use /Mayo or promo code Mayo and get yourself 20% off. You do it on Wednesday, you get Wednesday to Wednesday. You get 3 tournaments for the price of 1 week if you want to dip your toes into the water of fantasynational.com. Other than that, check out all the shows, rate and review, smash the like, all that stuff to help keep the show free of charge. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!